You're watching a replay of Brain Drain with Rich Cabaceres. For more videos just like this, hit that red subscribe button.
Good morning. How about that long weekend? How about them Patriots? You're listening to Brain Drain live on the legendary 1480 WSAR. I am Rich Cabaceres. If you want to watch this, listen live, you have so many ways to do that. It is unreal. We are bringing you new and inventive, if that's kind of the word that I want to use, but we are bringing you new ways to bring you my sound into your ears. We have WSAR.com on the Spindle City Auto Glass Studio Cam. If you go to WSAR.com, you can see me live in studio. You can see what the studio looks like. You can see what I do during the breaks. It's a lot of fun. You can go to Facebook Live and join by going to Brain Drain with Rich Cabaceres. Like the page, scroll down below. You can also join the conversation that way by commenting below the live feed. That's right, Brain Drain with Rich Cabaceres on Facebook. If you don't know how to spell my last name, don't worry, majority of people don't. Just type in Brain Drain with Rich. You can like the page and join that way. Also, you can listen to us anywhere in the world. And you know how you do that? You go to the TuneIn Radio app on your cell phone. You go to the App Store, you type in TuneIn Radio, tune in one word, radio is the second word, and then you download it. Absolutely free. Type in 1480 WSAR. My sound will come into your ears, whether it be in Japan, California, England, or Massachusetts. You can listen to me anywhere in the world, 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then we can also come to you live the old school way, on your car radio on 1480 a.m. We can come to you in your household, 1480 a.m. And if you want to join this conversation, because we're talking about the government shutdown today, you can call in 508-673-1480. Because as many of you know, we are in the midst of a government shutdown. And you're asking, what does that mean? Well, you know, it means a lot to the people who work in the Washington, D.C. area. This is affecting about a quarter of the people who live in the D.C. area right now, who are put on furloughs. And if you don't know what a furlough is, it's basically forced unpaid leave. So imagine you go to work on Monday morning and the boss says, hey, by the way, you're only going to work a half day today. The other half day, you're not going to get paid. You have the choice to go home or sit here and hang out, but we are not paying you for your services for the second half of a day. Or you might not even be able to report. So let's see what's affected right now by this government shutdown. First, we have the furloughs for the government employees who work in the Washington, D.C. area. Again, affecting about a quarter of the economy in that region right now. Second, you have the national parks. They're not picking up trash. A lot of them are shutting down. I know I heard Rick Oliveira play a clip about how the people weren't able to visit the Statue of Liberty today, which is a shame. But also, if you're in the military reserve, you have some time off. You had the weekend off because you weren't able to go in because you weren't going to get paid. Next, if you have an employee cell phone from the government, you know what? That's being canceled. You don't have a cell phone for your work, at least until the government gets turned back on, which I know I'm making it sound like a light switch, but ultimately that's what needs to happen. You need a compromise between the Democrats and the Republicans to do their job so we can start having the services that we pay taxes for. But if this continues, what's going to happen? Passport and visa apps are going to be stalled. Contractors who have payment options with the government, they're not going to get paid. And the IRS is going to slow down its preparation for tax season, meaning that you're going to get your tax returns a lot longer than you're normally used to waiting for them. So right now, there seems to be some compromise proposed by people who are moderate. And they're using this as a tool to pass immigration policy. So moderate Democrats are saying, hey, if we couple this with immigration and you allow us to kind of keep DACA where it is, we'll allow you to, we'll go with you in passing the government spending bill. But it doesn't look like they trust each other at this point in time. And Trump is saying, you know, if this continues, how about we just go to the nuclear plan, is what they're calling it, and they rewrite the policy. And the policy is, right now you need 60 votes in Senate to pass a spending bill. Now, he's saying we should rewrite the rules to make it a simple majority. And if that happens, it will pass. But how many times do they have to do that? Or can we just all get along? I know. Today we text a lot. We don't have a lot of phone conversations, but this is your opportunity to come live on the air and have a conversation about how you feel. Do you think that a government shutdown is something that should ever happen? Do you think that Democrats and Republicans should work closer together to make sure things like this don't happen, to make sure that policies pass, aka do their job? Or do you think that they should stand firm, hold the line, and not try to come to agreements because of majorities or minorities and all this other stuff? So, also, do you think that the Republicans should go down the route of trying to do the nuclear option, as it's called, which is rewrite the rules so a simple majority can pass a spending plan? This is crazy, right? How is this going to affect you over an extended period of time? Because if the government shutdown continues to happen, and I know they have a vote today at 12 o'clock, and hopefully something gets done, but what happens over an extended period of time? That's probably going to affect other things. It's going to affect things like filing your taxes, which we've already talked about. It's going to delay the process, but it's going to actually affect you having the opportunity to file your taxes. It may affect things like Social Security. It may affect things like Medicare, because they need the spending necessary to be able to pay those bills. Because as we know, the deficit continues to grow. We're in trillions of dollars of debt in this country, and there is no real plan to turn that down. And that's something that's happened under Democratic and Republican presidencies, so you can't blame one party or the other. This is something that's happening across the board or across the universe. So we're going to dive straight into the lines to see what you think. Call you live in 1480 WSAR. Good morning.
Good morning, Rich.
How are you doing?
Fine, how are you?
Not bad.
Good. My first time caller to your show, and I wonder if I might just comment on something that I read in the Herald on the front page today.
Sure.
A beautiful story about a couple, Mr. and Mrs. Barabee, who rescued a little kitty from the ice, and they think he's blind. And he went out there and rescued this little guy that was out there in the cold. His tail was frozen. A very beautiful story on the front page. And we just wanted to let them know. I don't know if they're listening, but whatever. It was a very beautiful gesture. And we certainly will pray for this couple and for the kitty, and that he will be adopted and have a fine home. And God loves his four-legged creatures, and he loves the two-legged creatures that care for them.
Now, caller, isn't it great when you see some positive information on the front page of the paper?
Absolutely.
And, you know, it's a shame because if we simply were able to work better together, we could see a lot more positive information.
And that's the reason that I call, because, you know, we are saturated with all kinds of garbage and junk, if you'll excuse the expressions.
And I think part of the reason is our society, right? So we are programmed as Americans, or I think maybe people are programmed to kind of feed into the negativity or pay attention to the negativity more so than paying attention to the positivity.
Well, negativity puts wrinkles in your face, and I'm not about to get them. Okay?
You got it. You got it. Now it's funny because one more fact that I want to bring up to you while you're on the line is somebody once taught me, and I believe this to be true, that if you do one thing wrong and you do 100 things right, everybody will remember that one wrong thing.
They're going to remember the one.
Right, and that's a shame because we should.
No, that's not really the way the Lord wants us to live. He wants us to live peacefully and lovingly, and to reach out to others. And this couple, God bless them, and they're going to be on our church list. At our church, we're going to put my husband and I are captains of a prayer team at our church. We're going to put their name on our prayer team. The kitty's name, they called him Frosty. And also whoever might adopt him, and those who are taking care of him at the animal shelter. Okay?
Caller, thank you so much for your call.
And God bless your day.
Have a great day.
Bye now.
So, you know, it's funny because I'm reading the Facebook comments, and I want to give a shout-out to those folks out in the Bank Street Neighborhood Association. First, somebody says, Rich, the government shutdown is staged BS stuff. Notice the lights are still on. Civil war hasn't set in, just more fake news by a fake president. And how does that make you feel? If you're listening right now, if you think it's fake news by a fake president, call in. Let me know, 508-673-1480. If you think it's true or you think it's fake news by somebody who isn't the president, if you think it's the Democratic Party causing all this stuff to happen, call in. Because there are so many factors, and I know right now that your legislative group is listening to this show. People care about what your opinions are. So let those opinions be heard. And I want to thank the previous caller for talking about some positivity that's happening out in the region. But let's continue the conversation about government shutdown, because this is something that could drastically impact every single person in the United States. We're talking about it could impact people's ability to go and report to military bases every single day. And granted, those folks who are necessary people have to go to work and may not even get paid. So can you imagine the military morale when you have to go to work every single day and not know if you're going to get paid or not? We also have the furloughs, right? So people who are going to work, there's actually a report in the Washington Post about this. Somebody who goes to work, he's furloughed for half of the day, and his bus doesn't come and pick him up until 4 o'clock. So he sits there and does nothing for 4 hours and stares at a computer screen, surfs Facebook, whatever, when that person could be productive. We're going to go back to the lines. Call you live in 1480 WSAR. Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
How you doing?
All right, yo.
Not bad.
You know, everybody's talking about this shutdown, but nobody's talking about Cliven Bundy being found not guilty of all those charges that the federal government brought against him. And, you know, the judge even said that the U.S. Attorney's Office willfully held evidence and engaged in misconduct. So we have government officials actually making up the rules, and they violate the Constitution. And nobody's talking about this, but yet a bunch of hosts on this very show were condemning the Bundys for, you know, standing up for their rights. But I don't hear anybody talking about it now. I wonder why that is.
Wait, are you talking about this show, the one that you're calling into right now?
I'm talking about hosts on this radio station. I didn't specifically say you.
Okay. So now you have the opportunity to talk about it, so continue.
What do you want me to say?
Well, I mean, so you think that this is something...
These people were arrested for violating federal rules or federal laws, and they were found not guilty. So, and now you have a federal judge saying that the United States Attorney's Office willfully withheld evidence and engaged in misconduct. And you don't think that's a major issue that people should be talking about?
Now, here's part of the concern, caller. So people in the United States are innocent until proven guilty. Do you agree with that?
They were proven not guilty. They just got released from prison after 2 years of being political prisoners.
Right. So due process allows people to be not guilty, and then once they're proven innocent, then they're good to go. People are not guilty until they're, proven guilty. So if they're innocent, then they maintain their innocence until the second that they're proven guilty. Now, that being said, just like any other situation, the media has a lot to play into this, right? So if there are headlines saying that this person did this, the word alleged is forgotten, right? So allegedly somebody went in and robbed a bank. You automatically assume that that person robbed a bank. So the media has a huge impact, and I think we can point to the O.J. Simpson trial, which happened 20 years ago. Is it 20 years ago?
We're not talking about the O.J. Simpson trial. We're talking about what's going on right now.
But I'm trying to...
Nobody's covering this. It boggles my mind that such a case that they made such a big issue about. The media was covering this when these people were being accused. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry on every station and on the news was accusing these people of violating the government's rights. But they're not, now nobody's talking about how the government violated their rights. Their rights under the Constitution were violated, and nobody cares.
Caller, and thank you so much for your points.
You fought for this, and you're not speaking out against it either?
No, caller, and again, I fought for due process, so thank you so much for your call, caller. And something to consider is the media makes everybody look guilty until they're proven innocent. And I want to point to the O.J. Simpson trial again. People, without knowing all the facts, automatically assume that somebody like O.J. Simpson was guilty before he even saw trial. So I think at this point in time, one of these things where we have to remember that due process is necessary. And when you read something in the paper, especially from the mainstream media, they only have one concern, and that's driving up their ratings. So they don't care about due process. They care about you making an assumption that is going to have you watching their shows more often. So I want to comment on a couple of things that were posted on Facebook. Somebody said, yeah, actually, the government workers who are middle-class America get to work and not get paid. Red or blue, there is no reason to be ordered to work without pay. Somebody on Facebook comments, Rich, it's pretty sad if they shut down the government and they still get paid, meaning Congress. And you're right, because Congress gets to break all the rules. Congress gets to break the rules when it comes to getting paid during a government shutdown. They break the rules when it comes to insider trading. For some reason, the rules apply to every single American citizen unless you're Congress or Senate. And I think you mean Congress as a whole, which is Congress and Senate, or House and Senate. So we're going to go right back to the lines. Call you live on 1480 WSAR. Good morning.
Hey, Rich, how you doing?
Not bad. How are you doing?
Pretty good. I just want to point out, for some listeners who might not know, what happens in other countries when they can't do things like pass a budget. Typically, I guess I'll use Canada as an example. I believe the parliament is dissolved and that they have to run special elections. And that typically, I would say that the prime minister or someone would actually resign just because they couldn't build a coalition, they can't get anything done. And wouldn't that be nice to have here?
Yeah, you know, I think it's important to make sure that people are working together. But ultimately, we have the power as Americans to vote them in and out. The unfortunate part is the media glorifies people who are an extreme right or the extreme left, and there's no real incentive to try to work things out.
Yeah, I agree, absolutely. One of the reasons I actually listen to WBSM is you guys have not WBSM, sorry, WSAR is you guys have a good mix of people to the left and people to the right, and I encourage my friends who are either to the left or to the right to get out of your comfort zone and listen to. I'm not a Republican, but I like listening to Jim DuPont because he's a very reasonable person and he gives a good argument from the other side, and so on and so forth.
Right, and actually, here's a question for you, Cole, a candid question. Do you think that this show is left, right, or center?
You're right in the middle there, Rich.
And that's important to me because I want to make sure both sides of the story are being told.
Yeah, no, I think you do a really good job of being pretty impartial. One thing I do want to bring up, which is not totally partial, though, is from my understanding, there were some Democrat senators who voted or tried to bring to a vote suspending congressional pay and also getting their military servicemen and women paid, and that vote was shot down by Mitch McConnell, and that's not too cool.
And, I think it's important to realize that both sides are going to have to concede if we're going to do this the old-fashioned way. If we're going to go nuclear and we're going to say it's going to be a simple majority because they're rewriting the rules, then that's a different story. But if they want to get done what needs to get done, which means turn the government back on like a light switch, compromise has to happen. You elect people to compromise, not to stand for, or at least I think you do, right?
No, absolutely. If I was right 100% of the time, we'd all be in trouble. So,
Caller,
there has to be some compromise.
Caller, you make some great points. Thank you so much for your call. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
Good morning. You're live on WSAR.
Good morning.
How you doing today?
Good. And yourself?
Not bad.
I don't think there should have been a government shutdown.
Now, what do you think they could have done about it?
Well, they tried to compromise both parties with the president. The president told both a Republican and a Democrat who went to the White House, whatever you come up with, I'll sign. After they came up with something, the president don't like it.
Well, that's because of the whole DACA thing and immigration reform, right?
No, that was over the wall. He didn't get the amount of money for the wall.
Right, so immigration
and I don't think we should spend $300 billion for a wall.
So immigration reform has been tied to the whole wall idea.
Right, exactly.
And this is now bleeding into the turning on the government because of the spending bill or
Correct.
Spending policy.
And I don't think people who came here with their parents, not knowing they were illegal, that this was fair to them.
Caller, you make some very good points. Thank you so much for your call. Have a great day.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure, go for it.
As far as the wall going for $300 billion, Trump is enriching himself in every single aspect of government. And as far as Congress being paid, if there's a shutdown, they shouldn't be. The 27th Amendment should be changed.
Thank you so much for your call. And
you're welcome.
I think you make a fair point. And if you think that Donald Trump is doing this to enrich himself, then call in 508-673-1480. If you think that Donald Trump is doing this for the betterment of the people of the United States, call in 508-673-1480. Or you can join the conversation on Facebook Live. Call you live in 1480 WSAR. Good morning.
Good morning, Rich. How you doing?
Not bad. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for taking my call.
No problem.
You know what? Might as well bend over and assume the position and go, the taxpayers are getting it, like we always do, just like we did in '08. You know, and it was supposedly heard that I was hearing over the weekend on C-SPAN, our credit rating, when this goes down, our credit rating and our interest rates, even on regular consumers, go up.
Well, actually,
and our
no.
credit rating goes down.
Yeah, our credit rating went down last time because of the government shutdown.
And who gets that? The taxpayers get it right in the.
Well, hold on. Let's see what Cedric Maxwell thinks.
Oh, stupid comes to see stupid, but stupider wins.
So stupid comes to see stupid, but stupider wins. How about that?
Yeah, and they shouldn't get paid.
You know,
I'm upset. I don't know if it's CFC, if I could say the peed off word, but listen, I'm peed off that they're still getting paid while they're squabbling.
And it's funny.
They're making over 100. All them people are making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and we got contractors shut down. We got some of our services shut down. This we've had this in 13. We should have learned this in 13. It's like we're repeating history, but we're not getting it, Rich.
And it's funny because you're right. Unfortunately, Congress and Senate get to break all the rules. They get to break the rules with insider trading. They walk into office with, maybe they're millionaires, but a lot of them aren't. They walk into office and they become millionaires because they're allowed to break the rules because they vote on the rules themselves. It's the same as when we see these state representatives and state senators giving themselves lofty pay raises. How does that make sense?
You tell me. You're in politics. I don't get it. I'm confused.
Caller, I'm not in politics. So I appreciate I was once, but I'm not in politics anymore. And I'm asking the same questions that you ask.
I mean, well, you were in politics. That's what I'm saying. But
Fair
you're
enough.
more familiar with the political, you're more, familiar with the political field than I am. You know what I mean? Like, how cannot people come together on basic human right issues, Rich? DACA, human right issue, yeah. Leave the 9 million? Leave them alone. Whatever. If they're working, fine, leave them alone. If they're not working and not contributing to society, like I said, they got to go. And what's the other thing that Brick walled on? Immigration, not wall.
Right.
We do need immigration reform. I'm like, we can all agree, to disagree. That's fine. But at the end of the day, we do need immigration reform, and we need tough reform. People at least need to learn the basics. Essentials on how to live in America. That's all.
And it's funny that you say that because when Barack Obama was in office, and I'm not trying to give the credit to Barack Obama, but senators like John McCain and Marco Rubio, they came together and they worked out an immigration bill. And unfortunately, the extreme right and the extreme left wouldn't come together to make this happen. So there has been some proposals that were right down the middle, and because of the glory of the TV, people are holding fast on their extreme right and their extreme left. Thank you so much for your call, caller.
Thanks, Rick.
Have a great day. Call you live in 1480 WSAR. Good morning.
Good morning, Rick. How you doing?
Not bad. How are you doing?
Good. Let's take an old-time solution to this problem.
Okay.
You go back centuries when the cardinals could not come upon a vote for Pope. They were in there for months. And the populace locked them in the chambers and wouldn't let them out to eat, drink, or use the facilities. They came up with a decision in a matter of hours. So what we should do is lock everyone in, feed them cheese sandwiches and milk, and I guarantee you that it'll be a compromise.
And, it's funny
and
because...
I hate to say it, people, that's barbaric, that's foolish. But, they're getting paid, they're getting their benefits, and maybe people should remember this at election time. Don't vote for the incumbent.
See, now, the concern that I have is when you make the broad cry of don't vote for the incumbent, it says that everybody in Congress is naturally not doing their job. So there have to be some people who are pushing for a compromise, and I know for a fact that there are. Now, what do you think about those who are trying to push for the compromise?
I have no problem with that, but yet people are getting fed up. But guess what? An example was here in Massachusetts this weekend. The Patriots were playing on their way to the Super Bowl. The first 30 minutes of a 1-hour newscast was all about the Patriots and Tom Brady. It goes back to the old Roman times. Give the people the games, and they'll forget about all the bull.
It's the bread, right?
Yeah.
So,
People say that doesn't make sense. It's the truth. Give them the games, and they'll forget about Congress shutting down the country.
Thank you so much for your call. Have
care.
a great day. You're live on 1480 WSAR. Good morning.
Oh, good morning, sir.
How's your day going today?
Oh, be careful. It's icy out there.
All right. Anybody who's driving in the Rhode Island, Massachusetts, South Coast Massachusetts area, be careful. It's icy out there.
And it's the Democrats' fault.
Right.
We didn't warn you.
Somebody on Facebook said it's the Schumer Shutdown, and I think it's adequately named, the Schumer Shutdown.
You think so?
Yeah, and I think it's on point.
It's not Trump, huh? It's not Trump blaming the Democrats for smaller?
I think it's both.
He's offered the wall on Friday.
So it's the Schumer Shutdown and the Trump. How do we word this?
The Democrats offered him the wall on Friday. They can't fund it, but the Senate offered the wall on Friday. What else do they offer him? You offer them military pay. That way, if you're going down the Cape today, at least you can pay your credit card by the end of the week.
Now, here's another question, and this is kind of an extreme. Do you think if a spending plan isn't passed that the people in the House and the Senate should get a pay reduction because they weren't able to do their job?
They shouldn't get paid at all.
Right. I agree with that.
Listen, they're in charge. They can't even get, even with a simple majority is what he speaks of, it wouldn't have passed. His party didn't vote for it. There was like 4 or 5 held out, or 3, something like that. So even with a simple majority, it's the president. That's who you got to look at, man. It's the guy that needs to govern. The businessman. He knows how to govern.
Now,
he knows how to make deals.
It's funny because I've made this statement before in the air, and I'm going to make it again right now. Whether you're a Democrat or you're a Republican, you're not helping the middle class. You're not helping the quarter of the people who live in the greater D.C. area who are now out of work or working and being unpaid.
They don't need the D.C. area. You can go down to Cape and not get paid today and slip on some ice on top.
Right. If you were a reservist and you rely on that $300, $400 a month to pay your student loans or whatever, you're not getting paid. So what happens then? It's
the Democrats' fault.
Well, I think it's all of the above.
No.
It's the Schumer shutdown because the Democrats are holding fast.
All they have to do is get 10 people on their side,
but
3 of their own.
But it's also the Trump.
No, if you listen to Saturday's show, it was a good thing that there was a shutdown, and the majority of their party did not vote for it.
But it's also the Trump shutdown.
Where were you on Saturdays? Are you busy?
Hold on 1 second. So it's also the Trump shutdown because Trump is also talking about using the nuclear option and rewriting the rules. So now it allows the majority to have an out, which is a shame.
Hey, this is what he wanted.
I agree.
The man in the White House, this is exactly what he wanted, a good shutdown.
No, I think it's what they all wanted.
So we better prepare.
Thank you for your call.
Okay.
Have a great day. And I think it's what they all wanted, and this is why. Because look at how much media is surrounding this. Look at how much media is surrounding the people who are power players in the Democratic and the Republican Party. Look at how much media is surrounding the people who are the extreme right and the extreme left. Meanwhile, the people who are in the middle, trying to work out the solution, they have very little press. Somebody said that they'll never vote for a Democrat again. Somebody else said this is gerrymandering in action. And we've talked about gerrymandering already. And lastly, somebody said, did you know the military will not get paid during the shutdown? Active duty who are defending us and the retired folks that gave years of service will be without compensation. Those are all some very great points. And we're going to go back to the lines. Good morning. You're on 1480 WSAR.
Good morning, Rick.
How you doing today?
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you perfectly, and I'm sure everybody else can.
I got a speakerphone on the telephone. Listen, I want to talk about today's opinion editorial, the Herald News.
Go for it.
Did you get any calls on that yet?
We have not.
No. Well, I want to bring it forward that I don't want to mince any words. I'm a hater of Donald Trump.
And why do you feel that way?
I just hate him. Let me just get that out there first.
Okay.
I don't want to get into reasons why. I just hate him.
Okay.
But this article in the thing about vile, the Herald News said vile things were said about Barack Obama. You know, about him being born in a foreign country and all that stuff. Donald Trump, he was an innocent. He did nothing, Barack Obama. Minding his own business, doing his job, and Trump's making all that trouble. He persisted all these years. He's still persistent that he wasn't born in this country. He's the guy that's vile, Donald Trump.
Okay, and I think you're bringing up a fair point when it comes to talking about the birther movement, because Donald Trump was one of the people who started that. Now, for everybody who's listening out there, if you want to call in and join this conversation as well, 508-673-1480, tell us why you love Trump, why you hate Trump. But I think it's important to continue. What do you think the government shutdown is being caused by? Do you think this is Donald Trump pushing the Republican Party? Do you think it's Republicans on their own? Do you think it's Democrats not being willing to compromise?
I don't know. It's everybody. It's everybody. I mean, I'll be honest about that point. As much as I dislike Trump, it's everybody involved in it. But another thing, I don't want to see that wall. I'm against that wall, by the way.
Okay.
I'm against funding of that wall. So that's got nothing to do with it, with this shutdown. But one more thing I'd like to bring up. I know you're very, very busy. One more thing that the editorial said, today's paper. It said Donald Trump lost the popular vote, but not by much. I think he lost by almost 3 million votes, right?
I think they're talking about the greater population. It wasn't by much.
Well, that's right. I guess they mean the overall population. He lost the popular vote, so I'm taking that's the whole country. But not by much.
And it's funny because we talked about this last week, actually. People are said that your vote, you're told that your vote matters, but every single opportunity that the government has to take away the power of your vote, they do. Yeah. The Electoral College, the Democratic and Republican National Conventions, gerrymandering, all these different things taking away your power voting.
Right.
Thank you so much for your call.
Oh, wait a minute, I'm not done.
Sure, one more.
Talk about a close vote. Close vote was John Kennedy. He won the popular vote by only like 100,000 in the whole country. That was a close popular vote.
I think that's a fair point, and I don't know how much he won by in that election.
I didn't know the electoral votes figures. I don't have it in front of me. That was close too. But I remember it was 100,000 votes that he won by the popular vote.
Thank you so much for your call. Have a great day.
Okay, thank you, Len.
You're live on 1480 WSAR. We got a minute before the news break, so go for it, caller.
Okay. My belief is the reason that we have a shutdown is because Democrats need voters. And as people become self-reliant and learn how to take care of themselves and no longer need the government for a handout, they move on and onto different things where they vote for parties that are going to give them opportunity rather than a handout. That being said, that's why Democrats won't move on immigration. That's where they get their voters. My parents were immigrants. My mother and father worshipped Teddy Kennedy. They'd kiss his ring if they could. But later on in life, they didn't feel that way.
Now,
when
I want to make
got here, Teddy Kennedy was the second coming because, according to them, he was the one responsible for getting them over here. He fought for them.
Now, I want to make one observation. I believe that you were right 50 years ago. Immigrants would vote for Democrats. The ultra-wealthy would vote for Republicans. But now when you look at who's representing who, the divide is even more so. And what you're seeing is people voting for Democrats and Republicans when they're really not representing either group at all, and that's the middle class. The middle class is not being represented by Democrats or Republicans. How does that make you feel?
I think that Republicans more so represent the middle class in a way that Democrats used to years ago. I think the parties have almost become like reversed in what they believe. They just swap beliefs almost in my lifetime from what I remember when I was a kid. I think the Democrats are just they just say what they got to say to get votes, power, and money. How can somebody like Nancy Pelosi be worth the money she's worth?
I have to hold you there because we're going to the news break. On the other side of the news break, we'll continue the conversation about the government shutdown. Stay tuned. Got it. So we're talking about the government shutdown. We're talking about how or why this happens. And we're talking about the impasse that the Democrats and the Republicans have found themselves. And of course, Donald Trump is saying we may have to take the nuclear option. And the nuclear option is rewriting the rules so that way the votes go from 60 votes to a simple majority. So should Senate have to do this? Should Senate have to rewrite their own rules to be able to get things done? And if you remember, they've done something like this before to get a Chief Justice passed. So the question is, does this need to happen, or should they be able to come to a compromise? And unfortunately, as I've been stating all day, mainstream media is part of the cause of this. Mainstream media locks on to the people who are extreme right or extreme left, but they don't focus on the people who are trying to work out compromises. There are plenty of people who are in the middle trying to work together, and there's no better point to that than when Senator McCain and Senator Rubio and a bunch of Republicans and Democrats worked together for immigration reform, and because the Republicans and the extreme right held the House and the Senate at that point in time during the Obama administration, immigration reform didn't pass, and we're still facing the same problems that we are now. Now we're talking about building a wall, and that's one of the reasons why this government shutdown is being held up. Or this government spending plan is being held up, because it now has to be tied with DACA, it now has to be tied with immigration. And how does that make you feel? How does it make you feel that people who work for the military are either being told to stay home, or they're going to work, reporting to work every single day, and they're not getting paid for it? How do you feel about your defense at that point in time? How does that make you feel that Congress and Senate are still being paid, even though people aren't going to be able to get their taxes done or tax returns back in a given period of time? Call you live in 1480 WSAR. Good morning. What say you?
Hello.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great.
This Rich?
Yes.
This Rich?
This is.
Hey, Rich. How are you there? Thank you very much for getting gas for me the other day.
It was anytime somebody needs a little bit of help, especially if I know them, I'm happy to go out there and give them a ride for some gas or something along those lines. And, it's unfortunate because I didn't get to see you at Nick's Hot Dogs on 534 South Main Street because you were dealing with a car issue.
Yeah, but it's okay. I'll meet you there Friday.
You got it.
We'll have I got to throw something out there again, my friend.
All right. Yes, give us an update on your son.
My son is still homeless. My son is being carried down from a third floor from two friends because he's crippled from his waist down. Housing is still nothing from housing at all. Everything has kicked in for my son. Mass Health, everything in Spalding, in Boston has helped. He right now has a bed in New Bedford Medical that he needs to lay in, but he needs an address. He needs to go somewhere. He needs to be living, which we are accepted already. In the housing, no one has come forth. My son is an emergency. My son is a big emergency.
So again, just
to
give an update, this is your son who got injured during a swimming accident and now is paralyzed and is being carried up, who is an adult, being carried up and down 3 flights of stairs to get the attention that he needs, and he's sleeping on a couch Which, luckily, he has somebody who's willing to allow him to sleep on the couch, but he's homeless.
Yes, but one fast thing. Housing tells me they're taking in hurricane victims. First it was from Texas and then from Puerto Rico. But now, when I go to the 6th floor of Fall River, I'm not going to say any names, someone up there of high authority says to me, when I mention hurricane, that has nothing to do with my son, meaning my son should be first. So who is telling me one thing and then the head of the 6th floor tells me that should not cover my son, hurricane victims?
So then why aren't they doing anything about it?
Why ain't they doing anything? Thank you. Why ain't they doing anything?
And as
you know,
we've come up with a couple of options, and we're still making phone calls at this point in time. Yeah. My friend Laura and I, Laura Washington, who is part of the Hidden Truth, we're working on some options for you. We have a place lined up, but unfortunately it's taking a long time to get you over there. Now, there needs to be a more immediate option, not just for your son, which your son needs it immediately, but for any other emergency like this.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Yes.
So
my son, yeah.
It's scary because what happened, that could happen to anybody, right? You could become injured for some reason, need some treatment, and you don't even have access to the handicap accessibility necessary to get by. And I know we're changing the topic, but this is so important. This is somebody who's dealing with a real life, real world experience right now. So tell us what you think should be done, and how long have you been working on this? Tell us kind of the status. And I know he's dealing with some sores because he's not sleeping on a proper mattress. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Got injured July 29th, emergency operation. He jumped into a pool, broke his spinal cord, was injured, and spent 24 days in Rhode Island Hospital. He spent 9 weeks in Spalding in Boston that I cannot say enough about. They are great. Everything they did for my son all kicked in. His medical, his nurses, his wound. He has to go to a wound a clinic at St. Anne's once a week because of his foot that has a size of a $50 sore on his foot. He goes there once a week. Everything is kicked in. Everything except housing.
And the funny thing about this is every single time he has to go to St. Anne's, every single time he has to go somewhere, he's carried up and down 3 flights of stairs in a 3-decker house to get to where he needs to go.
Absolutely. 2 weeks ago, he had something every single day to go to. Every day. Last week, 3 things. Tomorrow, he's got an appointment. Thursday, he has an appointment of this week. He's got to be carried.
Thank you so much for your call.
Thank
you so much for the update. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure the listeners really appreciate it. Have a great day.
And thank you for helping me, that you are helping me with.
And listen, I'm going to be happy once this whole thing is resolved. So I'm wishing you the best, and I appreciate the call and the update. And think about this. This is a grown man who has to be carried up and down the stairs every single day, multiple times a day, just to get to where he needs to go. Imagine if this was your loved one. How would you feel? They said no need to shut down the whole government over issues that can be tabled and voted on separately. This many actions are bundled in bills and budgets. And he said too many actions. So, that's a very, very fair point, because how about we vote on everything individually as opposed to packaging things all together that don't maybe or maybe not represent people of the United States. Call you live on 1480 WSAR. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
Okay. The gentleman who's looking for a place for his son who's in such dire distress, I'm sure. Have they gone to Catholic Social Services?
I'm sure he's listening right now, and I know based on what we've done on my side and Laura Washington's side, we've reached out. So So I think one of the issues is availability. And
yeah, right. Because I do know that, I mean, it might mean that he'd have to live in New Bedford until something came available, but I'm on one of their boards, and I know we try to always have a handicapped apartment available. But so you might want to give them another ring-a-ling and see, I just can't believe that they have to carry him from the third floor and he has to sleep on a couch. This is not the America I know.
Right. This is something that should be happening nowhere in America, and unfortunately it's happening right in my backyard. So this is a problem.
Yeah. Well, I wish him best of luck, and if I knew that it would work, I mean, I'll put out my feelers and I'll get back to you.
You got it.
And, right.
Caller, thank you so much for your call. Have a great day.
Yes, you too.
Bye. So, it's a shame because this is something that shouldn't be happening. These are the kind of things that government officials should be working on, and unfortunately, the opposite is happening. We're talking about how to stay further apart as opposed to work together. And there's no better indication of that than the government shutdown, right? People are working or not working because of furloughs. And if you don't know what furloughs are, it's forced unpaid leave. So people are being forced to take leave. And again, in the Washington Post today, they're talking about somebody who had to go to work this morning, only worked 4 hours, and then had to go home, but the bus doesn't come around until 4 o'clock, so they're sitting around in their office and doing absolutely nothing for 4 hours. Think of the inconvenience that is, because our elected officials can't get their heads out of their butts. So this is something that needs to be changed, and a proposal, something that you should think about. If government isn't able to do their job, should they get a pay cut? Right? If you, as a person working in a facility, continue to underperform over and over and over and over again, wouldn't you lose your job? Wouldn't you get demoted? So why do we allow Congress, Senate, state reps, state Senate, why do we allow city councils town selectmen to set their own pay wages? Why does that happen? And granted, a lot of these towns have town meeting format where they get to make the ultimate decision. But why do we allow people to set their own wages in government? Why do we allow insider trading? Why do the rules only apply to the average person, but not to government? It's not fair. It's something that should be done differently. So let's, again, look at all the things that are impacted immediately because of the government shutdown. Up to a quarter of the D.C. area is affected by this government shutdown. They're not going to work today, or they're going to work because they're being forced to work with unsurety if they're getting paid. National parks are not having trash pickup or are closed. You can't go to the Statue of Liberty right now because it's closed. The military reserve, if they had drill weekend this weekend, they were forced to stay home. If they needed that money for whatever reason, to pay their student loans, to pay a bill or 2 bills or 3 bills, they couldn't go to work. Government employees' cell phones are shut down. And if this continues to happen, passports and visa applications are going to stop. If it continues to happen, contractors are not going to get paid if they have government work. And last but not least, your IRS tax returns are going to slow down. That's going to affect your dollars pretty immediately. Last but not least, if it continues to happen over an extended period of time, what do you think is going to happen to Social Security? What do you think is going to happen to Medicare, Medicaid? This is something that we really, really should be talking about. It's really, really important. And we're going to continue the conversation talking about the government shutdown. And I know we've had kind of a robust conversation about this. We've had a robust conversation of what your government should be doing for you. And I know that rather than trying to come to a compromise the old-fashioned way, Donald Trump is talking about using the nuclear plan. And if you're watching on Facebook Live, you can see me using air quotes, the nuclear plan. And what is the nuclear plan? That is rewriting the rules so that way you simply need a majority as opposed to the 60 votes required to pass a spending plan. Think about this for a second. Why do they have to change the rules just because they don't have the ability to compromise? Do you think your elected officials are elected to compromise, or do you think that they're elected to stand firm? And again, I'll make the point that mainstream media glorifies those who stand firm on one side or the other because they get more airtime, and there's no better point or proof of this than when you look at the presidential election. And you can look at the Republican race, and you could say, okay, the last four people who were standing, you had Marco Rubio, you had Ted Cruz, you had John Kasich, and one Donald Trump. And they purposely grouped the three people who were calling each other liars and were making the most outlandish claims, and they were zooming in on those folks as opposed to the person who was kind of even keel, standing on the side of the stage, coming up with measured statements, not really talking about negative manners, calling people liars and stuff like that. On the other side of the stage, John Kasich. And if you look at the entire presidential election, I'd make the argument John Kasich was probably the most presidential candidate out of, let's call it the final seven, who were in the race on both the Democrat and the Republican side. Caller, you're live on the legendary 1480 WSAR. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. You're saying about compromise, and I agree that politicians should compromise. I think that the budget's got nothing to do with DACA and stuff, so I think that, get the budget passed and then sit down and compromise on the rest of it. That's my opinion.
Right, and I think that's exactly it. And somebody on Facebook said it perfectly. Why are we wrapping in all these different issues on something that's just simply part of the process?
Correct. It's got nothing to do with the passing the budget. I mean, you're just taking a shot of, well, if we strong arm, maybe we can get this or get that. And to me, it's not right to the American people and the military and everything else. Pass the budget and let's go forward.
And here's part of the problem. People use their political power and they use their opportunity to go on mainstream media to talk negatively about the people who are on the opposite side. And everybody points fingers at the opposite person. When are we going to start picking the person who starts taking responsibility for their actions?
Yeah, it is a mess. I mean, the country, it's just a mess. Democrats, Republicans, they're both to blame.
And I think you're on point. I think they're both to blame. And who is representing the middle class? I don't see the Democrats doing it. I don't see the Republicans doing it. And, granted, there are people who are more moderate within the party, but the mass majority are not looking out for the middle class. Because if they were, this government shutdown would not be an issue.
I guess the only good thing we can say is if we don't like it here, we get the right to move and go somewhere else.
Well, you're talking about within your individual state. We do have the right to move to a different country, but then we lose a lot of other freedoms, right?
Exactly.
Caller, thank you so much for your call. Have a great day.
You're welcome.
Good morning. You're live on 1480 WSAR.
Good morning. I just got a question about the government shutdown.
Sure.
Are the politicians getting paid? All these politicians, are they going to get their checks?
It's funny that you mentioned that. As of right now, every indication is saying yes.
Yeah, that's I'm just walking in the rain, trying to live the American dream.
Yeah.
These people are going to get paid, but military people aren't going to get paid. People forced to work aren't going to get paid. The politicians are going to get paid. I bet you if you start calling over the government shutdown, of course,
Caller, and I have to stop you there because you're making some great points, but your connection is coming in very poorly. So if you want to continue the conversation, call back in from a landline or something along those lines. Because you're making some great points, right? At the end of the day, we're expected to conform, even though people who represent us aren't. You're live on 1480 WSAR. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Rich. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing okay.
I'm actually interested in hearing who you think is to blame for this government shutdown.
At this moment, it's Trump.
Why do you feel that way?
Oh, it's easy. This is a no-brainer. There were two opportunities where the deals were presented to Trump. He said he was for him, then all of a sudden he was against him. Is that one of those, I'm for him before I'm against him?
Well,
he wanted this. Have you seen the ad that his campaign is running right now? Or at least have you heard it?
No.
Find it. It's vicious. wrapping the Democrats in the side of murderers and hating the troops and all that manure. So there you go. This could be fixed with a one-sentence statement. I think that's all if I were the Democrats, I'm not, but if I were the Democrats, I wouldn't trust Trump. He is one evil, sick dude.
Well,
constantly manipulating things for the way he wants things to be.
And I think you hit on a key word, caller, and that is trust. And unfortunately, trust is something that's very difficult to attain in all levels of government because people are sneaky in politics. And that's
people
not saying
are sneaky, period.
And that's not saying all people in politics, but there's a lot of people who are sneaky in politics.
And what's interesting is they could have fixed this with 3 words in the legislation. DACA will stay. End of issue. Democrats would vote for it.
Or how about simply this? Vote for it at a different time.
Well, no. I wouldn't do that with a con artist, would you?
And, they have the opportunity to do that, right? Why do they have to lump everything together and hold some things hostage?
Well, I agree with you. Why in the tax bill, did they have to sneak in, you don't have to, you're not required to take Obamacare? What does that have to do with this tax bill? Even some Republicans didn't know it was there. Same thing, isn't it?
I guess you're right, but
I know,
but
right.
but actually, and I'm gonna hold you there because
one last thought.
Sure.
I actually see a positive in this that I've never seen before. Conservatives who care about the public worker. My God, it's an epiphany. The lights from heaven are shining down. Usually they hate the greedy public worker. Now they're worried if they can pay their bills. What a change.
Thank you so much for your
have a good
call.
one.
And one more point that I want to make out: the difference between the mandate. There we go. There's the word that I want to use. The mandate to have health insurance, as opposed to what we're experiencing right now with DACA and how it relates to the spending bill, is DACA. Oh, I'm sorry, not DACA. The mandate for health insurance is part of the tax plan. That right? People had to pay fines previously, so that directly relates to tax reform. You're live in 1480 WSAR. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm one of your California callers, and the state legislature in California used to blow past the budget deadlines every year by month.
Wow.
And they passed a law that said if you don't pass the budget by June 30th, the end of the fiscal year, you stop getting paid.
How about that?
Ever since that happened, ever since they've changed that rule, the budget is passed by the end of June every year for like the last 5 years.
Can you imagine that? Can you imagine what would happen if people did not get paid if they don't do their job? Because that's what happens in the real world.
Rest of us deal with.
Right, but that's what happens in the real world, right? If you don't go to work in the morning, or you do an unsatisfactory job, what's going to happen to you? You're going to get fired. Right, and you're going to
voted or fired.
But for some reason, people in elected offices keep their jobs a lot of the time if they're performing in an unsatisfactory manner. That's a problem.
Yep.
So I appreciate you pointing out a law that exists right now in California. And if you're listening and you're in California right now, you should be happy about the fact that your state officials have to do their job, at least a portion of their job, when it comes to passing budgets. So,
and it's worked ever since they made that rule. They passed the budget on time every year with reserves.
That's amazing.
There's this thing called the Rainy Day Fund, which is now up to about $12 billion.
Can you imagine that? Now, how long ago, just about, did that pass?
I think it was 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay, so it's recent. And it's funny because one of the best ways to get people to work, if they don't want to work, is to affect their wallet. So, thank you so much for your point. I really, really appreciate it. And have a safe drive to work.
Thank you. Take care.
You too. You're live on 1480 WSAR. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. I wanted to talk to Rich.
This is.
Oh, hi, Rich. Hey, I just wanted to address the point you're making. It's a great show, and I love listening to it because it's nice, honest, open talk. A couple of things was, one, I think if the blame, as you noted, goes directly to the media, I think, with hardcore personalities on the left and the right, it's nothing but just put people into positions where they just won't back down, and that their beliefs and suspicions are confirmed, and that translates into voting where those elected reps have to hold their position accountable to their voters. The other thing too, I noticed it's come up a few times, is that there's a mention of why is the DACA issue being part of the scene now? Why can't it be addressed later? And to me, I think the answer is fairly clear: is that if the Democrats were to take it off the table now, they would not have any leverage for it to be brought up in votes later on in the Senate and the House, because as we've seen, both McConnell and Ryan, and I'm not just putting the blame on them, but as we've seen before, they would simply refuse to bring it up for a vote in the exact way that McConnell did with the Merrick Garland vote. So I think if the Democrats don't push the issue now, it will never come up for a vote in either the Senate or the House.
Now, you've made some very, very great points. Something to consider, though, and this is more so a question, in the event that DACA is not brought up in the Senate or the House, doesn't it just stay the way that it always is?
Well, I think what will happen is that if well, that's a great point, too. My guess would be is that if the Democrats don't secure it now by forcing it to come to order in both platforms on the House and Senate side, it'll be brought up later when it's convenient for the conservatives to squash it down, basically. And so I think there's basically, if the Democrats don't take it now, they're probably never. This is their strongest bargaining position at the time on this issue, I guess is what I'm saying.
And I think, and I understand what you're saying, and I think ultimately it doesn't seem like a lot of the conservatives who are against DACA reform are going to move from their position, because they represent people who have large immigration populations. And it doesn't seem like the people who are Democrats are going to move from the position as well. So to me, I think that if we're talking about DACA, I don't think that this should be one of the standoff points, because it doesn't seem like it's going to be reformed anyway. Whether you like reform or you don't like reform, it doesn't seem like it's going to happen because the votes aren't there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point, too.
So
thanks, Rick.
Hey, I appreciate the call. Continue calling in. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Somebody on Facebook says, my parents came from Portugal when he was 6 years old, but they came in because my uncle sponsored them to come into the United States, and my dad came first, and then my mom, and then his family. I had to find a job and get an apartment and furnish it and call the U.S., call us to come and join him. It was all done the right way. The green card, the government knew that we were coming here, and we had green cards and had to be vaccinated. And he worked his butt off to keep a roof over our heads, pay for medication, doctors, not the state of the government. And I'm sorry, because I'm trying to kind of read through this. I don't have my reading glasses on, so you can make fun of me about that. But also, it's interesting because people talk about these stories, but there are different times, and different times call for different measures. But the question is do you think that ultimately it should be on the people who are not American citizens to just go back to where they belong? Because the situation is more complicated than that. Really, the situation is a lot more complicated than just saying we're just going to send everybody back to where they belong. And while it's an idea, I think we have to come to a compromise on both sides of the argument. Call you live on 1480 WSAR. Good morning.
Good morning, Rich. How you doing today?
Not bad. How you doing?
Good conversation. A couple of things I want to touch base with you.
Sure.
A couple of updates. I heard early this morning on local TV and the other. I do listen to other. Not that I'm prejudiced to SAR, but I did listen. I heard earlier the touring as far as the Empire State and the Statue of Liberty will remain open. The city of New York, I think, between the governor of New York and the mayor of New York are going to pick up the tab for the time being.
I thought they said they were giving.
Shutdown.
I thought they said they were giving reimbursements.
Because
they were closed.
Open for the tourists.
Oh, okay.
As far as the Statue of Liberty and I think the Empire State and any other tourist spot in New York City.
All right, so there you go.
The city is going to pick it up between the state and in the city for the time being, and they're going to pick up the tab for that for right now to keep it running.
Caller, thank you for that point. And apparently I misheard this morning.
No, that's fine. The other thing I want to say real quick, I know people who work in Newport. We forgot the fact that we have some good people who live in the city, in the area, who work in Newport. And I know someone who works at the commissary. Now, you know what the commissary is?
I know exactly what the commissary is.
If this continues, if the shutdown, the commissary will close after Wednesday. They will not be able to shop at all. So people who would decide they want to go down there and shop at the commissary will not be able to, because it'll be closed. They'll have to go to, let's say, a regular grocery store to go do their shopping.
And to explain what a commissary is, or the commissary on the post is, that's the place where the veterans and the people who work in the military actively have buy their groceries. So
absolutely, that's what it's there for. Been there for forever. Like if you serve in the military, or you're a retiree who retired, has a card, can go on base and shop. If you got your 20 years in, or 30, whatever amount of year, the years that you put in, the 20-year retirement, you can go shopping with your card, if you have a military card, and do your shopping, whatever you want, groceries, or go to the PX, you go buy, if you want to buy T-shirts, you have that privilege. Now, like I said again, after Wednesday, it will not be open. And unfortunately, the people on the base, whether you're a civilian, if you're a civilian worker also, let's say you have a GS rating or whatever, people are going to continue working without pay until this gets resolved.
Thank you.
They'll be coming in and working.
And I have to hold you there because we're getting close to the end of the show, and I want to allow other callers to call in. Thank you so much for your call and your points today. Caller, you're live on 1480 WSAR. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
How you doing?
Yeah, pretty good. The filibuster rule should be gotten rid of.
Well, there's a lot of rules that should be gotten rid of, and I think filibustering is a fair point.
Yeah. The filibuster rule is a partisan club, is all it is. It is used as a club by both sides.
I agree, and I'm glad you made that point. Both sides.
Yeah, both sides to force their opinion on the American people.
And it's usually the minority party.
Yes, by both parties. And the Constitution itself declares what votes requires a supermajority, and the fact that there requires a supermajority just to get the business done in the United States is it's so ridiculous. I never went along with that filibuster rule ever. I think it's certainly not democratic to require a supermajority to get a vote.
And, it's funny because it seems that the government is in the business of creating votes, not the opposite. But we have 20 seconds left. Caller, go for it. What's your last point?
That is my major point.
All right.
We're a democratic society, so majority is supposed to rule.
Thank you so much for your call. Have a great day. I've had a lot of fun today. Thank you so much for listening in to Brain Drain. I'm Rich Cavaceres. You're listening to the legendary 1480 WSAR.